5 days and counting. College football playoff semifinal Rose Bowl game. Alabama 12-1, champions of the SEC. The Big Ten champions, Michigan 13-0, entering the CFP for a second consecutive season undefeated, and of course a third consecutive Big Ten championship. Welcome to the voice of college football, breaking down the game we all love each and every day with you. Best discussion, debate, and analysis based on your participation. Please do all those good things like the video, share the videos out on social media, subscribe. Why do you do that? Well, you don't want to miss a call-in show. Hit that bell for the notifications to know when we go live. We have sliced and diced this one from a number of angles, and now we have taken to the streets. We have asked you, our voice of college football community, out on Twitter, advantages for Michigan, advantages for Bama. Let's get to those Michigan advantages. Is it in trench play, trench warfare, offensive line play? Michigan, the Joe Moore Award-winning football team, 2 consecutive years, 2021 and 22, against that Alabama defensive front. So we asked you to weigh in on your opinion there. With 167 votes cast, line play is Michigan's biggest advantage, according to 31% of you. And again, that is on the offensive side. That's on the defensive side, as Michigan is number 1 in scoring defense and top 5 in just about every metric, especially those physical metrics on a defense against Alabama's offensive line that struggled early in the season, especially with Caden Proctor at left tackle, the true freshman 5-star, but he has played extremely well down the stretch. More Michigan advantages possibly against Bama would be their consistent performance. And what I was going for here, consistent dominance from Michigan. They didn't dominate Ohio State. They didn't dominate Penn State. They had a pretty rough time in a 1-touchdown win on the road against Maryland late in the season. However, everyone else, they dominated. They dominated everyone they were supposed to. They had one of the greatest scoring differentials in college football, and of course, Big Ten championship game winners over Iowa 26-0. More consistent play from week 1 all the way through the first weekend of December out of Michigan. But out of Bama, of course, struggling against Texas. They lose by 10 at home against a ultra-talented Texas team. We know about Texas, and we'll talk more Texas-Washington later in the week. And the South Florida effort is the one that everyone points to as the very nadir of the Alabama season. 3-3 ball game in the fourth quarter. They win 17-3. Jalen Milroe did not play, but that seems like ancient history. But in recent weeks, Bama did struggle. A few weeks later against Arkansas, barely hung on with a 4-minute drive late to seal it over the Hogs at home, a bad Arkansas 4-8 team. And then, of course, 4th and 31 needed on the miracle play. Jalen Milroe and Isaiah Bond pulled it off against Auburn on the Plains. And so Bama not nearly as consistent or consistently dominant as Michigan. Over 12% of you believe that Michigan's consistent play will be an advantage over the Crimson Tide. Also, the running game of Michigan, not nearly as dominant as it's been with Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum in 21, with Corum and Donovan Edwards in 22. Donovan Edwards, of course, taking over for the injured Blake Corum, was a wrecking crew throughout the late season games, Illinois, Ohio State, the Big Ten championship game, and the playoff. Donovan Edwards silent this season on the ground, has been more of a weapon through the air, and Blake Corum averaging 1.2 yards less per carry than he did last season, but did lead the country in touchdowns this year with 24. So the Michigan running game, over 21% of you believe that's an advantage for the Wolverines. And then there's motivation. Michigan has lost 2 consecutive playoff games. They have not shown the ability outside of the Big Ten to win big games, clutch situations, big opponents on the big stage. So motivation on the side of Michigan, according to about a third of you. Now, what about the Alabama possible advantages over Michigan? And I got to admit, they were much easier to come up with these advantages on the Alabama side for obvious reasons. And the first one right here, coaching, playoff prep. Nick Saban's the greatest of all time. Few would argue that. Jim Harbaugh, extremely capable, has performed his magic on multiple levels, the NFL stage, going to a Super Bowl, multiple NFC championship games, 3 of them. No one's going to argue the resume. I certainly was defending this guy when many Michigan fans wanted him on the streets in 2020. So, excellent football coach. However, the postseason record is dismal. Dismal. For Jim Harbaugh, we know it. Since defeating Florida after the 2015 season, it's been all L's for Michigan in the postseason, and college football playoff losses the last 2 years against Georgia and TCU. While Nick Saban, it has taken a gargantuan, Herculean type effort to defeat a Nick Saban team in the playoffs. Just look at it. Either he wins a national championship, or it takes the likes of 2021 Georgia defense, an all-time great defense, or it takes Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson-led Clemson teams, or it takes that Ohio State team with the Bosa's and Zeke Elliott and Michael Thomas and all those NFL players, just a loaded NFL roster, and Urban Meyer in his own right, one of the greatest of all time, to win that game. And so you really have to point to a great all-time effort to defeat a Nick Saban team in the playoffs. That's all there is to it. He's been that good. So most of you thought that to be the advantage for Bama over Michigan. Nick Saban with a month to prepare. How about the sheer talent? Alabama's arguably the most talented team in college football. Michigan, according to the 247 Sports Composite, is 14th. No team has ever won a national championship in the playoff era, and even going into the BCS era with a outside the top 10 talent quotient. Deshaun Watson and Clemson at number 9, Trevor Lawrence and Clemson at number 6, with historic quarterbacks, legacy great quarterbacks, were able to lead Clemson and get past that talent gap. But you generally need a top 3 or 4 team in the country in terms of talent. Now, the one possible difference could be we are in the era of the transfer portal, and Michigan has built much of its roster and its starting roster, especially on the offensive line, with transfers. That could be the difference. But for 35% of you, you said sheer talent is a Bama advantage over Michigan. And then finally, Jalen Milroe and the athleticism. Not that Michigan doesn't have a fast, talented defense. And I got to say that these cornerback tandems at Michigan with Will Johnson and Mike Sanderstill, and Alabama with Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold, I believe are the 2 best quarterback tandems in college football. But Jalen Milroe's got a gun, and he also is so accurate. It's almost like the further he throws the ball downfield, the better. But in recent weeks, now he's gained that reputation, but in recent weeks, look at the Georgia game, through the intermediate pass well downfield, in addition to the deep throw. And then, of course, it's just the athleticism. Name the most athletic quarterback Michigan's defense has faced. I think it's Gavin Wimsatt, and he is no Jalen Milroe. He is an exceptional athlete. He is long and lean and tough and big and Cam Newton-esque. 20% of you roughly agreed with that statement. Michigan, again, roughly a 2-point favorite, 1.5 according to pretty much the consensus Vegas line right now, leading into the Rose Bowl 5 days from now. Your thoughts below on the poll that we're taking. If you would like to take part, it's on Twitter. Just follow me at MarkRogersTV. Leave those comments below right here at the Voice of College Football.